Call order Traffic and Safety Committee meeting. We'll start off with any public comment from anyone here that's not on the agenda tonight. We'll have plenty of public comment with each item, but if anyone has anything to bring up off the agenda, please do so now.
Can you still do the same format?
Yes, please.
Less formal, but still, yes, who you are.
Well, Phyllis wasn't there, so I didn't know whether I had to do that or not.
It's just so it's recorded.
Oh, okay. Okay. Dulcie Brown, 1404 East Wildona Way. I just finished writing another note to you guys. Thank you again for closing Wildona. It was the most quiet weekend we've ever had since I've lived there for the 25 years. The only traffic that we've had problems with are the people who can't read, no outlet. I don't know, they just go flying right on by. So maybe they think it's a surprise at the other end. But today I was at my
There
mailbox.
is a surprise at the other end.
Yeah, there is. I was at my mailbox and I heard this big truck rumble by, rumbled all the way to the end of the street, kind of stopped for a while, rumbled all the way back up Idalia, rumbled all the way back, went down Elmora, rumbled all the way back, went down Boyero, rumbled all the way back, sat down there for about 30 seconds, rumbled all the way back down. It's like, damn, I knew he was really confused about this. So thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, also Burton McKenzie, 1514 East Wildona Way. As in terms of the rumbling up and down and trying to figure out whether or not people are paying attention to the signs, I thought it would be. And thank you again, the board as a whole, closing Wildona. It has been dramatically a night and day versus pre-closure versus post-closure. Obviously, I think I've heard from the west side over at Akron, obviously during rush hour, can't tell as much, but everyone we've spoken to has basically reiterated that the rush hour is busy, but then it's like silence every other time. That was expected. So the only thing I think I was going to make some comments was to maybe, I'm not sure if town staff has had time to maybe do an outreach to the mapping companies. Google Maps, last week it was fixed. From anywhere within our neighborhood or anywhere outside the neighborhood, Google Maps was routing around. And there should be, that's pretty easy to let them know, but I know it takes time. I've done it like 15 times to alert Google Maps and also Apple Maps with more success on Google Maps. And then today it was right back to saying that it was available to come in from 88th again. So that could be one of the reasons why if you are getting complaints, that is definitely something that's pretty easy to do, and I think it might be better and more effective if it came from the town and the town staff to actually do outreach to however many mapping companies that there are. So whether that be MapQuest or Google Maps and Apple Maps, that would, people doing deliveries can see that. It'll just automatically reroute. Tell them it's closed right there at 88th, and it will automatically reroute, and so people will not get confused anymore. It's actually, they do it all the time. So
staff will make an attempt to contact mapping companies to see if we can get that changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional public comment? Okay. Alex, let's review Pitkin speed hump requests.
Okay, the request that came to us from Odette and Bella, and they're here today tonight to present the request. We did set up our speed trailer out there, and I've included in the packet the memo with the speed data that was collected and closest speed is 25 miles an hour. The 80th percentile speed is calculated as 29 miles per hour.
Hey, Alex, is your mic on? Is your mic on?
Thank you. the posted speed is 25 miles an hour. The 85th percentile speed was 29 miles an hour, and about 26% of the traffic was exceeding the 25 mile an hour speed limit. So, anybody wants to speak to this?
Hi, good evening. I'm on the Dock 981 East Torgan Way. Thank you all for allowing us to present that request, especially Alex, who was very responsive and communicative about this issue. Look, we have a couple of streets with lots of young kids running around morning hours, afternoon, after school. And because of the way Pitkin is, see it over here. Number one, on Pitkin and East Torgan, there's a stop sign, which is apparently a recommendation. I think a very small percentage of the cars that are going through there, because of the good visibility, because of the angle, hardly ever stop on that stop sign. Second thing is that we see cars speeding most of the time at a speed that represents a serious risk to our children on that street. Children being children, there's no crosspath or anything that is marked over there. Just go to the other side, go to the front of the other houses, and we fear a serious risk with the speed that we see. I can tell that the day that the speed radar was put in, there was a dramatic decrease in the speed of cars going to the street. It was just visible from the top of the hill right away, and we could see the effect on the neighborhood. And despite that, we still see about 30%, almost 30% of the cars on the street speeding. So our request, I think my request and the neighbors here with me, is to do something about that. Could be speed humps, could be a raised crosswalk, anything that will slow down the traffic between Rock Creek and Pitkin down the street before that stop sign and post that stop sign will be a great help. Any questions?
Yeah, for the committee's benefit, I gave you some options here. The original request, I think, so. Was to put four speed humps, and two up on the north end. One down here, one past Roggin. So there's crest before. Permanent speed humps like we've installed on Waldona cost about $12,000 per location. So we're talking upwards of $50,000 if we have 4 locations. Another option to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We do have a trail that comes through here. So we, like in other locations, you could put a raised pedestrian crossing here, and at least have that to serve 2 purposes, both for traffic calming and to provide more visibility for pedestrians crossing. A raised pedestrian crossing costs about $25,000. If we did the speed humps, I would recommend maybe 2 or 3 speed humps, because we do have a stop sign, and even though people roll through it, at least they're going slower than they would normally go. So 2 speed humps would be about $24,000-25,000. So and then finally, since we did notice a reduction just putting a speed radar sign, you could install a speed radar sign for about $5,000. So those are some options, and I know there are other people in the neighborhood that are here to talk to this.
When is Pitkin scheduled to be redone?
In terms of reconstructed or resurfaced, it's probably 5 to 10 years out. Nothing on the horizon right in this area.
Yeah, it might be separate from Pitkin specifically. I mean, I really like the raised crosswalk, and I think every time we redo a road, I think we should look at some cram downs and raised crosswalks, and what can we do as we reconstruct a road to make it better designed.
Sure.
But redesigning the road to add those cram downs and raised crosswalks is expensive.
Cram down?
A narrow one. So the crosswalk, the raised crosswalk, and then the road gets narrow, so people can't drive around it. Cram down is the term for it, right?
Neck downs.
Neck downs. Thank you. That was something. So learning all these phrases.
Cram down sounds cooler.
How wide is Pitkin?
I think it's probably 34 feet. I can measure that. Okay. Well, centimeters, yeah. Yeah, 30.
It looked like it was 37 feet.
Yeah,
Well, that was
I got to walk maybe. 33, about 33, 34 feet. I think it's wider than Castle Peak. Castle Peak was a little narrower than this.
Are the raised pedestrian crossings, are they as effective as speed humps?
I think you have one at Superior Elementary.
Yes.
There's one on El Dorado Boulevard, too.
Yeah, so that one is higher, it's flush with the curb, and so that one's pretty effective, I think.
Yeah, I guess my initial reaction was,
So I'm Darrell Billington. I'm old 1105 South Pitkin. If you look, the raised crossbed wouldn't go anywhere here. It wouldn't go anywhere here. And you'd have to redo the trail here.
Yeah, you'd have to do something with the trail to realign it.
Because they don't line up. So I'm not sure. And it is important right here because they do get some speed. We went around and we had flyers, and everybody is aware of how fast the traffic goes, and that the stop sign, I think it's right here,
Yeah, right there, yeah.
is more of a recommendation, they think, than the actual stopping. And so, these are the houses that kids are using their bike, and they usually go down this way or out that way. And so to slow it down here with these houses is important, and then somewhere over here to look at it. So in talking to a lot of the people, we're not sure the raised path would be as effective for the money as if just we had speed bumps. So.
And Alex, so thank you, and I'm sure hopefully we'll get more public comment.
Sure.
What's the size of the speed bump that's, the hump? We've seen Castle Peak, it has a slightly different geometry to it than the ones that we installed on elsewhere. So what's your...
Well, the ones on Weldona, I think, are 3 to 3.5 inches high, but they're wider, so it's more of a hump. The temporary ones...
those ones are really ineffective.
Yeah, I agree with
I mean, those things you can drive 25 miles an hour over, and really, it's not a problem.
You notice them at 25 miles an hour. If you drove 40, you would really notice them.
Well, nobody should be driving 40.
Right.
So what's staff's recommendation for the height? Is it, so we've learned,
We've learned, and then the ones on Castle Peak are 3 inches high,
right,
but they're shorter.
but the geometry's different, so you don't, so what is staff's recommendation?
No, staff would go higher, probably 4 inches, and maybe make them a little shorter than we did on the Weldona ones to make it a little more noticeable. So I think we'll learn from the ones at Weldona. I think they meet the national guidelines, but apparently...
Right, and then based on your experience, when does it get to be disruptive for those that have low-profile vehicles? What's your...
I think over 4 inches is probably going to be very noticeable.
Well, I don't mean very noticeable, I mean damaging. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that, somebody's got if we do this and then we trap somebody in their Porsche in that community or whatever low-profile vehicle they have, what's the minimum height or the maximum height?
Maximum height, I would say 4 inches.
Okay, and you were not recommending anything, we're going to steer, even if staff's recommendation, we'd steer clear of the hitting that maximum height, correct?
All right, we would, I wouldn't go higher than that because we risk, people coming in, going the speed limit and getting damaged. Or then we have emergency vehicles that have to travel over those too,
right,
and slow way down.
Thanks.
So to that point, I believe our curbs are 3.5 inches. And if you have a performance vehicle, you have to back out on an angle. So 4 would be pushing it. 3.5 would be a challenge at that point. Scott Beck live on South Pitkin below the stop sign.
Thank you.
I do not object to raised walkways. However, the folks that live in that house might not like the path moving, and I know we'll lose a tree in the other direction. In order to realign the pathway, it's currently been striped in the last year to appear as a walkway to call some attention to the fact that bikers and cyclists and runners are crossing at that point. So that might be a logical point, but anything downstream of Roggin is a dead end. There isn't much room for speed gain at that point. Coming uphill from the stop sign is about 300 yards. So to put more than one speed bump in there is really more of a nuisance than it is a benefit. To our friends in law enforcement, I have one question for law enforcement and a recommendation. One is, I see that the average speed was 4 miles an hour over. In most jurisdictions, that's not a ticketable offense because there is a cap at that. However, wrong is wrong, right? And if it's going to cost us $50,000 to $100,000 to put in speed bumps, why not make some revenue out of it instead? Let's get out there and throw some tickets out because people respond to tickets very well. And to put speed bumps in is an inconvenience to those of us who are traveling at the speed limit and abiding by the best interests of the neighborhood, the property values, the kids in the area. So measured from here to here at 0.2 of a mile, which is roughly 350 yards, and we're looking at a couple of speed bumps in there. First talk I heard was 4 or 5 in the 0.4 of a mile, which seems to be excessive for inconvenience of those of us who live below the stop sign, and would just ask reconsideration of the whole proposal. Let's enforce what's out there and hold us accountable for it and not make it inconvenient for the snow plows, the people that live down there, the folks with lower profile cars. Thank you.
Can I ask you a couple questions? I get your point, but do you think it's reasonable that law enforcement can be on just Pitkin to enforce a speed limit of 4 or 5 miles an hour over when we have excessive speed limits on roads that are, I think, much more dangerous, such as Colton Road, with kids crossing to go to the park quite a bit? Do you think that that's reasonable on Pitkin?
So let me answer it this way. There's obviously only so much law enforcement can go around. My daughter is also in law enforcement, so I understand the limitations. However, is it also reasonable to spend $50,000 to $100,000 to force people to drive 15 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone rather than holding them accountable for what it is? I can guarantee you that a police car for a day a month would change behavior for people to abide by. I drive my children to school. I know when it's a school zone. My children ask me, why are you slowing down? It's 25 miles an hour. I am going to slow down. I have seen officers enforcing that at Monarch High School, at Coal Creek, where they're looking for people coming into that zone, and it makes an impact. You see it once, you remember it for a number of months. So, again, Stop signs are enforceable. Speed limits are enforceable. Speed bumps are not enforceable. If you have a full-size pickup truck with a lift kit on it, feel free to drive 40. If you have a low-profile vehicle, you're going to drive 20 to 25 miles an hour in order to get over a speed bump. So I'm not sure that it really enforces what we're looking to enforce. Yeah. Plus, it's an inconvenience for those of us who live below the stop sign.
Yeah. Okay.
Evening, gentlemen. I have an ad hoc comment and a suggestion. My name is Randy Coffey, 25 years at 1125. Although I'm not Italian, I have to use my hands. So I've lived there for 25 years, and I'm sort of at the launching point, coming up from the stop sign. I like the idea of speed bumps. The number will work out, I'm sure, if that's the case. But one thing I've noticed is snowplows. And people get stuck on this road, even though the grade, I don't know exactly what it is. I myself have had to back down in the winter to get momentum when I didn't have an all-wheel drive car. But I'm thinking, if you put a raised walk, how do snowplows work with raised walks? Because if they leave any abundance of snow there, that's going to compound a problem that I already see. So I would like you to consider the snowplowing situation wherever you put these, because it is a traction issue. The other thing I was thinking about, and this, we're not really talking about this, but being there for all these years, the amount of near accidents coming out of Riverbend. It is both ways. People speed both ways. But I was just sitting here listening to everybody's ideas. And as a temporary and low-cost solution, why couldn't you make that a three-way stop sign? There's a stop here. There's none here. It might help as a low-cost solution to see a candidate instead of putting speed bumps. You can still, maybe you'll do speed bumps down there. But I can tell you, because I hear it, I have a lot of math in my background, so I can actually sit there and time people as they go in front of my property and get a good idea how fast they're going. But they hit that stop if they do accept the recommendation to stop. They nail it. And your speed, I know it was a machine. I don't believe those numbers. They're a lot higher than that. People just nail it. And the amount of times that there's been an incursion coming out here, very high. So just like you consider an alternate, maybe some stop signs at this intersection might handle two problems.
Thank you. So just for, if anybody else is going to talk, just do us a favor and stay as close to the microphone as you can, just so those that are home. But I think your voice is probably loud enough. So let me just start a couple comments. You had a comment about the snow plows. So we've had objection to some of the speed humps and speed bumps we've considered. We've had George Kuffner who's the contractor that works for the city, who's promised us that it will not affect his plow services. He's all about safety, and he'll make whatever work. So he even brought the temporaries into a shop, and they ran some tests, and we've not seen, Alex, keep me honest here, but we've not seen any issues around the plows. I think we all had some of the same concerns once we started piloting some of those in the past. And second, I just say that we wouldn't, while this was a master plan community a number of years ago, these streets are really poorly designed. They are just too wide, and current communities are designed with narrower streets that force people to slow down. It's a bit counterintuitive, but that is sort of current and better design thinking. If we had all the money in the world, of course we would do neck downs, and we'd narrow the streets, and we'd have more raised pedestrian crosswalks, but it's just not possible. So we want to treat these streets and make them as safe as possible, and we'll spend the money to do so if we see this dangerous. But I think I think the stop sign is an interesting idea, and appreciate the fact that, from a speed bump perspective, right, I mean, I think the point is to get it right. We placed some in another area that we're going to talk about later, and we did see some pretty significant reductions in speed limits.
That was a speed bump you're mentioning? Or
Yes,
speed bump?
the speed bump.
Okay.
And we did see some pretty significant reductions. But I'm not sure we put it in the right place. You know, it's important to not put it near an intersection so somebody could drive around. You don't want to put it right in front of somebody's house if you could avoid it, because they can get a little noisy on some of the clankier cars. So, you know, it's not only the number, but the
Well,
place.
being where I am, that was a concern of mine, but this is a problem, like I say, for 25 years that has not abated at all.
Right. Good.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Middich. I live at 1100 South Pitkin. I've lived there for like 24, 25 years. This problem's been getting progressively worse lately, and it's a bigger deal now that kind of the demographic of the neighborhood is changing, and we're getting more kids living in this area. The older people are moving out, and we're getting younger people. I don't believe these numbers here at all, okay? These speeds are way too low. I can sit on my front porch and watch the intersection at Rogan and watch people sail through that. It's probably maybe 20% of the people that stop. It's maybe, 30% that slow down, okay? I've seen people go down the street at well over, 45 miles an hour, okay, on a regular basis. I think the speed bump that would be right in here somewhere is absolutely necessary. It's required, okay? I live right here. When people come to the stop sign in the morning, this is like an on-ramp to US 36 right here, okay? They hit the stop sign, and if they stop at all, they basically accelerate, like they're getting on a highway, okay? In the afternoon, it's just the opposite, okay? People come flying down this, and if they stop at all, they're going 45 miles an hour plus. I mean, these numbers don't make any sense. And I think the reason they don't make sense is because when you collect data, you have to make sure that the method you're using to collect data doesn't affect your data. And when you put that sign there with that speed limit on it, you've automatically changed people's behavior, okay? So the numbers are much higher than this says, okay? And as far as Randy's recommendation for the stop sign there, I think that's Riverbend and South Pitkin. I think that's a great idea because that is a very dangerous intersection. And anybody that goes through there and that's going down Pitkin and doesn't slow down is going to get, eventually we're going to have a big accident there from people pulling out of Riverbend. So that's my thoughts.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Would you have a change of heart if there was a three-way stop at Riverbend and Pitkin of putting a speed bump in front of your house? If
No.
there's stop signs at both ends,
It's still needed.
it's still needed.
Yeah. It's basically a race. At one point, I saw 2 cars full of teenage kids going down that street side by side, okay? So, quite honestly, the people that live below Rogan there, and even some of the people on Rogan, when they hit this point here, they feel like they're out of the neighborhood, okay? They don't care about the people that live in these houses here.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Cammie Muller. I live on 1115 South Pitkin, so I live right here. Have 2 children, aged 11 and 14. And I think something that's important to note, I'm in favor of either a speed bump or the stop sign or a combination thereof, and it would be one that would probably land in front of our home, which is not a problem for me. I think what's important to know, and a few people have made reference to this, but I think it's hard to see in this picture, is the slope on Pitkin when you turn off of Rock Creek and you descend down to the lake. It's quite a slope, and I think that's why the speeds get high in that section that goes in front of our houses, especially when you're coming off of Rock Creek is it's quite a bit of slope, and if you don't stop at the stop sign, that I think I've seen people roll right through it. I run, I walk with my dogs, my kids are out, and I worry about them crossing Pitkin. Even my 14-year-old pays attention, but my 11-year-old does not. And so I'm in support of something to slow the speed down, particularly off of Rock Creek until you get to the lake.
So a speed bump right in the middle of those two stop signs, potential stop signs. Yeah.
That would be what I would support. Thank you.
Can I readdress? Because I live at the bottom, and so I get the coming into the neighborhood.
Right, so there's a pretty, well, as much as it's informal, can we just be respectful, and it's just the microphone would be helpful. So if you could just, so that way people that want to watch at home, so it's recorded and stuff. Thank you.
Hi, John Pollard, 1115 South Pitkin Avenue also. I just want to say I am in support of the speed humps. I'm not sure where they go. I would leave that up to a traffic expert and their skill and expertise. I think the speed bumps are only an inconvenience for those people that are speeding through the neighborhood. People are smart. You know, they know when the traffic sign goes up, it's there to monitor. It's not just a reminder. It's clocking you and counting the speed. So I think that it can be it is skewed because people see it and they know. The other thing, people are smart. If you temporarily put police officers in the neighborhood to clock, they'll figure out where and when they hide, and they'll slow down. I appreciate the law enforcement coming through the neighborhood. I see them all the time. But I think it's a temporary solution to a permanent problem here. So, again, I just want to say I am in support of the speed humps. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Alicia Alpenfels, and I live at 1105 South Pitkin. So I'm also in this area, which is, I think, the most of the people this evening are in this area of Pitkin. I totally understand the concerns of the folks who live downhill, that they don't want a ton of speed bumps. But what I think people aren't realizing is that we do take the brunt of the speed because we have the majority of the neighborhood that everyone's driving by. The very first day we lived in our house, I stood in my living room and watched a car go by, and I was looking at two young children, 5 and 6, across the street, thinking, oh, there's kids in the neighborhood. And as I was watching them, a car went by so quickly, I couldn't tell you the color, and I couldn't tell you the model. And that's been what it's been like for the last 5 years for us. Very often I can be in the room, I can be looking out the window, and a car will go by so quickly that it makes me kind of catch my breath. So I agree that the speedometer, what happened with the speedometer, and I'm going to step to the screen, was you could see it from here. And so people were able to slow down really quickly because it was a hill. People saw it, even though it was way down here on the other side of Rogan below the stop sign. You could see it almost the minute you hit Rock Creek or hit Pitkin. So it was really easy to slow down. So I don't think it was a good representation because people were able to slow down certainly by here before this really calculated. I don't know exactly how it works, but it seemed like it really did slow down traffic. Again, I don't want a ton of speed bumps. I don't want to inconvenience everybody, but I do think there's a lot of teenage drivers. I think there are a tremendous number of people that run that stop sign. I think Randy's idea of a stop sign at Riverbend is a great idea, but I also would say to put a speed bump right here, mid-hill, would be really beneficial to slow traffic down. I don't know if you need both. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is this is a blind curve coming around from the park or from the pond. You really can't see the stop sign until you get right up on it. And so that could be one of the reasons people kind of roll through it. So I don't know if it would be better to move it and put it closer to the pond so that there's just, maybe there's a stop sign here and there's a stop sign there and then there's a speed bump. But I do think as people come around that curve, they are coming very fast because that's very much open space. You feel like you're out away from houses when you're driving in this stretch. and so people gain speed. So again, while we don't want to inconvenience the neighbors down the hill, we in this area have a significant issue that we have to address because it's very, very dangerous. Thank you.
So I'd like to offer my support of the idea of a stop sign. My children have been taught to slow down before they come to the death intersection because people look downhill, not uphill, and looking to pull out because of landscaping and landscaping. So it is a difficult intersection for sure. Also, one of the points that was made is there isn't a path on this side of the street, so a crosswalk or a raised crosswalk at that point may not be necessarily effective for 25 grand because the only walk surface is on the path side of that street. However, again, putting a crosswalk here with a stop sign here doesn't seem as effective as putting a stop sign at the top where I think we've acknowledged that there already is a traffic hazard. So I am in support of the stop sign solution because now you have two that are enforceable devices that should slow people down and keep them from hitting, it was well termed, the on-ramp to DIA as you come up that hill, because it is a temptation to pick up speed as you head up to Rock Creek Parkway. Thank you.
Alex, we have a stop sign here, correct?
Yes.
Is there a stop sign there?
Yes. It's a three-way stop.
So it is a three-way.
I don't know what the history of when that was put up, but it would make more sense that this would be the stop location just in terms of what it serves. You know, this is just the cul-de-sac. There'd be a lot more traffic here. That would be more an appropriate place for a stop sign, but certainly that would be, given how much traffic there is on Riverbend, it would be an appropriate place for a three-way stop.
And somebody addressed kind of the low-cost solution of a stop sign. You're for those that are relatively new, don't be shocked by this amount. It's not
right, just
low cost. So.
Again, yeah, it's a pretty low cost. It'll be, $300 to $500 for three stop signs. So okay. It's not a very. The issue we have with when you put stop signs up at places that are not appropriate, like cul-de-sacs. If you have a cul-de-sac, and we saw this on Weldona, where it's not a through street that's intersecting the main street there, that people tend to roll through them and ignore them. Where if they're at places that are appropriate, then you get better compliance.
You don't have any traffic data on Riverbend, do you? East Riverbend?
In terms of the volume here?
Yeah.
No, I probably do, but I don't. I would say it's probably in the 500 to 600.
Really? That's it?
But I'm just speculating just to see how many people around here that may go that way. You have the.
They all went east to Weldona.
Right. So,
that's not funny.
That's true.
It's kind of funny.
We're gonna have more. We're gonna have more now.
Hey,
not anymore.
It's not on the agenda. So, but realistically, I mean, certainly when you, for those that, is it Rogan? I never knew that. I always pronounce it Rogan.
Rogan. Yes.
Rogan. I think one of those things should have been in my orientation packet.
Louisville,
right.
Louisville.
So, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, Rogan can't have more than 100 cars a day hitting that stop sign. I agree. This better place would have been on East Riverbend with probably 800 cars. Okay.
Well, just one thing on that. Okay, so I believe the three-way stop on Rogan was put in because at a homeowner's request fairly early on to try to do what the speed bump is needed to do in this area here, wherever it is, up there. Good. But clearly that's not working, okay? Because people don't stop or they just accelerate out of there very quickly. And I think even if you put a stop sign, three-way stop here, given the fact that stop signs are optional in this area, I think you still need the speed bump here. I really do. And if you don't believe me that there's a speeding problem, I live right here, okay? You can all come over, sit on my front porch, and watch people fly by there, okay? I'll serve you iced tea. We can all sit there and watch it. Nobody stops here, okay?
Alex, do we have any data in terms of accidents at South Pitkin and East Riverbend?
I don't believe we've had accidents there.
That I can recall, I don't believe we've had one, but I can look through the data and confirm.
Hi, Mike Padula, 930 South Pitkin. I am right where that path is at. That's my house right across from the pond, right here. For those of you that say, I understand that the traffic comes down here and blows by, but guess what? If they're blowing past the stop sign, they're blowing past my house too. And I've been there for 20 years, so I see that quite a bit. I'm not against having some kind of a speed deterrent, if you will. I think that having something more here to coming either way, I think it's kind of excessive to say that you have one here, and then having one here and one here, and then maybe even the stop sign up the top there. I'm not really sure. I understand the slope. This is very treacherous in the winter, and you can honestly, if you hit the brakes, you can slide right through the stop sign if you want, because there's so much ice that builds up there. So putting something there, I think could potentially be hard for the plows or whatever to keep that thing cleared enough to where it's not even more dangerous than what it already is. As far as a stop sign there, I don't think that it's effective, and I don't think that putting another one would be effective. I do think that the speed hump would be more effective. But this stop sign here is the only stop sign on all of South Pitkin. There's 3 streets here. On the other side of South Pitkin, there's 4 streets. Okay, there's no stop signs, and there's 2 speed humps, one at Purple Park and one at the path that comes across. And that's almost a mile long. This isn't even a quarter mile to get from here to here, and we're looking at putting that much speed mitigation in place there. So I'm open to it, but I think that it needs to be the right amount to where it's fiscally responsible, but not to where it's punitive to people that are trying to drive. I think it can have the same effect, whether that's here or up here. But yes, this is the most dangerous place here. I think a number of people have already said that. I've raised 2 boys, and it is the death place. And it's always people that are right here trying to turn here. And again, it's because of the slope right there. They can't see the cars coming, and they're ready to just get to work or whatever. So they're looking this way, and you're coming this way. And yes, we teach all of our kids to slow down there, and if they're not looking, you better. So something could be either here or here, so someone's going to have to slow down, so it's not as dangerous. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Adams. I live right at the end of South Pitkin there, and I'm pretty new to the neighborhood. Kind of wanted to back up something Alicia said. It is really hard to see that stop sign being new to the neighborhood. I have, not seen it and come pretty close to running it, so that was a good point. I would be in favor of the inconvenience of a speed hump in that stretch we've all been talking about as the worst part. I think the inconvenience would be well worth the added safety for the kids. My kids play all up and down the street, so even though we're down at the end, they're all over that street playing all the time. The only other thing I wanted to mention is several people mentioned the radar machine affecting speeds and affecting the data, and I saw that there was a fairly low-cost option for the permanent speed radar sign. I thought that'd be a good idea. If we're all convinced it's slowing people down to have the temporary one there, then maybe having the permanent one would be a good idea as well. That's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Dan Flute. Lived over here on Islet right there for the last 25 years. And I agree that something should be done. One of the concerns I do have is back with the steep grade here. If you put a speed bump in there, in the winter that hill can be kind of hard to get up. So if you're going up the hill and it's snow and you hit a speed bump, what's that going to do to people trying to get out of that area? The area over here, I'm always on the look for that just because people will look left and then they look right and the next thing you know, they're pulling out. And so I'm always looking to make sure that they're not pulling out in front of me. I don't know if we've done any traffic measurement for speed in this area either, because that is a fairly wide road. There's rarely any cars parked on it. There's no houses unless somebody's out there fishing. It's about the only time a car parks out there. So it feels like a really good place for people to get going faster, and then they hit that stop sign and either go through it or they don't. But I think that's all I really had for concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else? What do you guys think?
Well, this is the first that I'm hearing about an issue with Pitkin. I'm glad that we're talking about it tonight, but this isn't. This is really news to me. So, I want to make sure that we're making, an informed decision, but not a rash one, because it sounds like this is kind of a similar situation that we were dealing with when we were addressing Castle Peak. I think it's a problem with the topography of the part of the neighborhood, right? We've got a steep hill coupled with, as Kevin said earlier, a poorly designed street that's too wide, which just encourages people to go too fast on it, and that then causes the problem. So how do you address it? And it seems like a three-way stop sign at South Pitkin and East Riverbend seems like a no-brainer to me. That seems like it's a dangerous intersection. We could put that in with relative low cost. So that I think I'm initially supportive of. I'm reluctant to throw a bunch of speed bumps in the neighborhood. 4 seems excessive, and I want to make sure that we're being careful with where we're placing the speed bumps and how they're designed. The ones that went in on Weldona, I think, weren't engineered properly to do the job that they needed to do. The temporary speed bumps that we put in on Castle Peak, I like the fact that we have those. I was surprised that they're as expensive as they were and not as easy to remove, and not thrilled with the location, and I think people can kind of drive around them. I think that's something that we can kind of get better at. So, to the extent that we were actually going to install like a permanent speed bump, I'd want to make sure that we're getting it right and not just putting in something there that's ineffective. But I do hear the concerns about, I don't know if people are trying to get up that hill in the winter time and you hit a speed bump and it's icy, and how does that impact your ability to actually get up that hill? Most people in Superior drive a Subaru, so it's okay. So they'll be able to exit it properly. But for the few that don't, they may struggle. But, I think I'm open to it, but, at the end of the day, that's $15,000 to put in a speed bump, so I want to make sure that if we're going to put it in, we need to put it in the right place, we get it right. However, I think, initially, I think that, it seems like we've got a real problem right here. I haven't heard, I'm not convinced that, the people that live in this neighborhood are really dealing with a huge problem. At least it seemed like the vocal concerns raised tonight was really here. I hope that a stop sign here will do something to at least encourage the people that are traveling down this hill to go slower. It might be something that requires a speed bump, and maybe this is one of those things where we put in one of the temporary speed bumps. I think we have an extra one. I think we ordered 3 when we got them from Castle Peak, right?
Well, I think your next item is going to talk about permanent speed humps on Castle Peak.
Right, so we'll have 2 that we'll be able to redeploy, but we can't do that until the spring because the snowplows will rip those out, right? So, I think generally speaking, I would be in favor of putting in stop signs here now, making sure that this stop sign is visible, I don't know if that's just a trimming of trees.
And we can add, you know, a stop ahead sign here if there's a visibility problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm reluctant to just litter a neighborhood full of signs. And I think that that's one of the problems that the people in Waldona were dealing with, that we just had just sign pollution. But then in the springtime, employ a temporary bump here and see if that starts to alleviate the concerns, and then reassess. And that's kind of the reason why we got those temporary speed bumps in the first place, is we didn't want to have the town spending, you know, tens of thousands of dollars doing something permanent only to find out that it wasn't effective. So, and that was one of the problems with Waldona, is we put in those speed bumps, and then subsequently we put in those temporary speed bumps on Castle Peak kind of as a pilot project to see, can we do something to actually address the excessive speeds in that neighborhood? So I think that that's kind of where I'm leaning to, but you know, I'm all ears in terms of what you guys think.
So the good news, one of the things we talk about and think about is the unintended consequence, right? So if you change traffic, if you change somebody's pattern, either their speed or where they drive, or you make it an inconvenience, they're at risk of going somewhere else. There's no other exit on South Pitkin, so there's, you know, we're not going to force people to another road, which is something we need to talk about later. I actually thought it was a really good comment. I have a number of friends, and my kids have friends on the roads that are off South Pitkin on the other side of Rock Creek Parkway, and I never noticed it before. There's no stop signs there, right? So it's interesting, and that road is just, on the other side, seems to be a little better designed. Cars just don't seem to go as fast.
There's raised bumps. Yeah, there are.
Yeah, you're right. They do have the raised, yeah, there are the 2 or 3 raised crosswalks. So
one at Purple Park, and then where the path comes through is about halfway.
Yeah.
So 2 in the length of like a mile instead of a quarter mile.
Nobody wanted 4.
Right.
Nobody, that was the town. Nobody ever suggested that.
So the comment being made, just so we can get it on record, was that nobody wanted 4. That was the town's recommendation. Right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the folks down at the end.
Can you come up?
I'm sorry, we just got it. Right. It's one of our most common complaints is you have these meetings are televised and we can't hear a darn thing. So thanks.
So I feel like there was a concern from the folks down at the end that we were coming in and wanting 5 or 4, and really those of us who asked for this to be considered really just want like 2 maybe at the most. But I think the stop sign's a great idea. I think we wanted something here on this slope and then something to slow it down as people came around the corner. But I think when some designs and some thoughts came out on paper, it looked like this original group that asked for this request all of a sudden wanted to add it 4 or 5, so that the group that lived at the end, that would be a terrible hardship to drive over 4 or 5 humps. So I was just saying out loud, that was never our intent. We just wanted like 1 or 2 just to slow down the traffic. That's all.
So the speed data definitely tells us that there's a problem, right? And so now it's how to, I personally would rather solve the problem sooner rather than later. And we've had the temporary flashers there, correct? The temporary speed signs, the flashing sign?
Yes, we had it up here.
So my experience, I live on Torrey's Peak where there's a flashing speed sign. I frankly don't think it's that effective. I mean, it's effective for me to watch somebody speed and say, I knew they were going 31 miles an hour, but besides that, I just personally don't think it's all that effective. It's a really big sign, and it's a bit of an eyesore. I'm glad it's there. I'd rather have it there than not there, but I don't think it's been a significant enough deterrent. I do think that the most significant deterrent we've seen are the speed humps, and if we have some temporary speed humps, I'm game for I'd personally be supportive of 2 additional speed humps. The stop sign, I kind of have mixed feelings about. I think they're kind of an eyesore, and if we could solve the problem another way, but again, mixed feelings about the stop signs, but I would agree 2 speed humps, one by the pond, and one by
one here and one up here.
Right, one somewhere by that pond, and then one somewhere where the houses are. If we could configure it so it's not near somebody's driveway, right? So that's, I'm looking at a map, and the driveways sort of seem like it could be difficult to have there without in somebody's driveway, but I would leave that to the traffic engineers.
Here.
Exactly. But I think if we have temporary speed bumps, that was the point of buying the temporary speed bumps, right? So we could try them on Castle Peak, see how they are, and then redeploy them somewhere else. I wish you all are going to go online and you're going to find them for $800, but the ones for $800 are garbage. So we had to spend, so the ones that we're going to spend are going to be $5,000, and it is what it is. And that's why we have Alex and the team tell us what we need.
But how much does it cost to actually deploy those each time? Because obviously there was the cost associated with actually purchasing them, but then I remember being surprised at how much it actually cost to install them and remove them.
If they were, I think 15,000, about 7,000 to purchase them, about 7,500 to install them.
7,500 to install them. It's not just pounding a couple bolts into the ground.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Amazing.
And is it the same to remove them?
I think the removal will probably, and we can do that with our crews, so I don't think that'll be a problem. But to install a speed hump here is probably, $3,000 a pop to install those things. So it's not cheap.
Wait, I'm not following. So to install the temporary would be $3,000?
The ones we just did were 7,500 for the two we put in.
Right. Okay, so you're saying just to install one. Okay. I misunderstood. I thought you said it was 7,500 per bump. Okay, so it's about $3,000 to install a single bump.
So that's what all it would cost. We have the speed hump we bought and paid for.
All right.
Taking it up, we could do it our own crews. That won't cost us, but putting it in, we need help to put it in.
Okay.
And then, Sergeant Chamberlain, could you just address the enforcement and whether or not you think you could put some additional patrol cars there to help with enforcement between now and the installation of speed bumps?
So like most of you, this is the first time hearing of it. We get calls all the time about different areas where there are issues with speeding or other traffic signs, other things like that. And I have a list in my office, and every so often I post it again with new streets for the officers to spend more time there. So if we'd have known about this, I'd have had people out there more. I mean, I've drive down the road probably once or twice a week, and I've always got my radar on. I've never gotten anybody speeding, but we don't sit there consistently looking. Now that we know it's an issue, when I get done with this meeting tonight, I'll send out an email tonight letting people know, hey, let's keep an eye on those stop signs and keep an eye on the speed limits on Pitkin. So we will spend more time there.
Do you want to comment on the three-way stop there?
I can see what people are saying because there is that hill as you're coming down, and I can see where it could be an issue. I drive my patrol car's a truck that sits up high, so I don't have any issues seeing, but I can imagine if you're in a smaller car, it'd be harder to see up that hill. So I don't see an issue with the stop sign there. I don't see an issue with adding an additional stop sign if people think it's going to make it safer. And that's, again, it's something else we can enforce. It might slow people down, it may not, but we can help work on that as well.
Okay. Alex, can you pan out just again so we can see that whole picture? Please. All right. I also think that having 4 speed bumps on that stretch is too much. I like the idea of the 3-way stop here, and we've got the stops here. I can't imagine that by the time anybody gets down here that they're still going, if they are speeding, going 35 miles an hour, because there's a dead end there and a dead end there. So I got to believe that if they are going 35 miles an hour, they're at least getting down towards 15 when they're coming into this part. So I don't think you really need a lot down here. I do agree that maybe a speed hump here, because if there are people parking here on either side of the road, if you can, and fishing and all that, and there's kids probably around the pond, that there should be some kind of deterrent to speed down there. And especially if the neighbors are fine with the speed hump here, I'm all for it. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it because I think Kevin had brought it up that they can be noisy when you go over, but if you're willing to accept that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. I have driven down here quite a bit, and I do recognize the slope. So I don't mind going all in and putting a speed hump here and a speed hump here and then the 3-way stop here. I don't see any issues with that. And then the other thing, and it may not be something that the neighborhood wants, but our CAPS committee has done stuff. They've painted the roads around Superior Elementary School just to call out. And they did it mostly around crosswalks where they just painted out where it says look. So if you're on your phone or you're looking down, just to remind you to look up that there could be traffic around. But they can do creative things around stop signs as well that draw your attention to the stop sign and make you stop. So I think there's other things that we can do also that will make that stop sign or the requirement to stop pop out a little bit more. But that's something that we can ask them and have them present to us and see if they can come up with something creative that isn't too unattractive in front of your homes.
Do you have any concerns about the traffic heading, I guess it's southwest, going up the hill in the wintertime, hitting that speed bump?
Well, I have driven up there in the snow, and I haven't had a problem because I've got a truck that can, a four-wheel drive truck. I don't think I've ever had to put it in four-wheel drive, though, to go up there. But, again, I don't live there, and I don't drive it on a daily basis in the wintertime. We have to be concerned about that, and I don't know, if that's going to be a big problem with the speed bump there to slow down.
Are you aware of any standards in terms of the grade of a particular hill and whether or not a speed bump is approvable on that sort of?
I haven't read about that in the literature, no. But I think we provide a pretty high level of snow removal here, and this is priority 3 street, so we would jump on it, and we have a bunch of speed humps and raised crossings throughout town, and that has never been a complaint that I've heard. So this may be a different situation with the grade. So we have the one we put on Waldona was on a pretty good grade.
Yeah.
So
Alex, a level 3 street, what is Eaton Circle? Is that a level 3 as well?
I think so.
And I just want to have some kind of comparison, because you could have 2 level 3, or I guess that would be lower priority streets with that designation, but you could have one, such as Pitkin, that could require more attention to snow removal and ice removal just because of that slope. So can we have our snow removal company actually make that a higher priority?
We'll see that next week when we have our annual snow removal. You'll get the map and see that, and I'll try to before that meeting try to determine some of the streets that have steep grades and what the priorities are, and try to discuss that next week.
Okay. So where do we leave this? I mean, as a committee, we've kind of made issues like this that we have the authority to make an approval on moving forward with stuff like this, especially with the stop signs. To me, that's a no-brainer, and I can't imagine anyone else on the board would object to that. But do we want to present to the board first and let them know of our decision? Or?
I think my recommendation is to make the recommendation. I think we're close here. As I said, I have mixed feelings about the stop sign. You guys are both supportive of the stop sign, so I'll go with you. Chris, I think you like the idea of having 2 speed humps. I definitely want the speed humps marked. Can we align on 1 stop sign, 2 speed humps, location to be determined around Alex, or do you want to wait on the speed humps and study it more?
So, point of clarification, are you suggesting putting in the temporary ones in the spring, or are you doing a permanent?
Just temporary in the spring.
Okay.
Temporary as soon as possible. They can get it in the fall, great. If it's got to be in the spring, we'll do it in the spring. And in the meantime, ask Sergeant Chamberlain to do some additional enforcement, see what we can do to make sure it's a safe situation. Your speed data is really bad. By the way, for those that said cars are going too fast, I believe you. The data are what they are, but sometimes I think it just doesn't capture. I had the same issue. So, and this is bad. 85, you've got people going 40 miles an hour. That's bad. So, and don't stop them. But if you see somebody going down the hill up to one of the houses, write down their license plate, call, and Sergeant Chamberlain will send somebody out to knock on the door, which he's done.
If you can get a plate and be able to identify the driver, it helps us.
Yeah, so it's 40 miles an hour is unacceptable. Unacceptable. So 35 miles an hour is unacceptable. 30 miles an hour, you're not my friend. But
20 is plenty.
20 is plenty. Thank you for that.
So I would just say, yes, I I support putting in the speed bumps, the temporary ones. Just practically speaking, we've got the 2 on Castle Peak. They're going to need to come out before the winter. So I presume we've got 1 in storage. If it's going to cost us, $7,500 to put it in now, and we're going to have to yank it up in a month or 2, that seems like it might not necessarily be the best decision. So maybe it makes sense to, when we remove the Castle Peak speed bumps, put those on Pitkin in April.
What if we were to maybe split the difference here? Do we even have a budget to put in a full-on speed hump?
Do we have what?
The budget to do that now, or would that have to be something that has to go?
Okay, well, we have a traffic calming budget, $50,000 a year. We've, with the Waldona closure, we'll probably have exceeded that. We have $50,000 budgeted for next year. So we have Castle Peak to consider tonight, and this is something that we may be able to fit in next year. We certainly can fit in the temporary, installation.
That would be next year then.
Right.
Yeah. But what if, would you guys be up for putting in a permanent speed hump up between the 2 stop signs between Rogan and Riverbend, and then maybe next spring put in the temporary down the bottom to see how it works?
So my only concern with it is I want to make sure we get it right? Like I don't want to spend $15,000 on a speed bump that is ineffective, and I also don't want to spend $15,000 on a speed bump that is not placed appropriately. And so, based on just my limited experience with what we've done with speed bumps since we've been on the board, with Waldona, I didn't like the way they were engineered, and on Castle Peak, I'm not thrilled about where they were placed. So
how do we determine the proper location for them, Alex? And I would agree with Mark that if we were able to move it, if we could get consensus on that you present back to us what style of speed hump, how high it is, what it's going to look like, and where exactly it's going to go. But how do you determine that, where it's going to go?
In terms of the design?
Well, just
the location is tricky sometimes because we want to go out, we want to like it here, and then we talk to the neighbors and they don't want it there, and then you have signs to put up. So it's difficult, especially when there's a lot of driveways, a lot of homes, because you can't put it right across the driveway, and you got to look on the other side. So.
Well, we have the neighbors here tonight, so
right. I think they.
No, but that's the point. Is I think we need to talk to the neighbors and say, where do you guys think that this should go?
I'm definitely not advocating for doing this next week. I'm just saying that let's not wait till next spring when we've got, it seems like the entire neighborhood in that stretch really wants this to happen. So why wait? Can we start the study now and start reaching out, and maybe we put a target of 60 days to have.
But the temporaries don't.
No, I'm saying put in a permanent one.
Yeah, the permanent, at this point, it would be difficult to get the location, get a design, get a contractor lined up before the asphalt plant.
I think Mark's point is good. I think the only way to know whether or not they got it in the right place is to have people drive over it for a month or 2 to figure it out. I like the temporary speed bump idea. It's, if we're gonna fail, let's fail with something that's temporary that doesn't cost $15,000 and get it and improve it the next time. So,
Alex, can you move the map to show that section of Pitkin? All the pointers again. Can I borrow your pointer?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So I haven't driven this street in a while, but if I recall what I heard earlier, it sounded like there was some appetite for a bump to go here, like so 2 houses in on the left and 1 house on the right as you're going down.
Yeah. Pretty much in the middle, almost.
And that's before, so that gives you, 3 houses before the stop sign on that side, 2 houses on this side. I don't know if people want it before you actually hit. No?
That was better where you had it.
We're here?
Yeah. And we're out here.
And are you still open for comment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not try $1,000 worth of stop signs and see what it does over the winter?
Well, so
Because we're saying we're not going to speed hump until spring anyway.
So the comment is that we should maybe just try the stop signs first before we spend money on speed humps. So,
Because we can do that now.
so
I would like to.
can we have you guys? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Just thanks.
So, well, I'd like to acknowledge, having the stop signs there. Everybody on Pitkin know that there is a stop sign. We're a closed community, so our neighbors just aren't taking the stop seriously. And so to have the stop sign up there is a great idea. When I back out, I live here. When I back out of the house, I look both ways and I back out, and by the time I'm ready to go, somebody is on me already. And I thought for the longest time, oh wow, I need to start looking better, and so when I do that, and it's in the morning when we all go to work, they just take it, and so I would recommend the stop sign. I'm right there, or the speed bump. I'm right there. If anybody gets stuck on the 1 or 2 days of the year we need it, I can move some stuff. I will help them. I'll be off. I'm a school teacher. I'll have the snow day.
There's also a light.
Yeah, there's a school bus stop here and up there and down at the other end. So it's dangerous.
Well, one of the things that we've been trying to do here on this committee is, be more nimble and responsive and try things out in a manner that's a little quicker than, we can do with a full board. We can deploy these stop signs immediately, and just based on, it's mid-September, and it's going to be snowing in a week probably or two. So practically speaking, the speed bumps are not going to be able to go in, whether they're permanent or temporary, this season. So we're looking at spring. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to have a two-phased approach. And when we go forward with putting in a speed bump, we'll have some, at a minimum, some anecdotal data of how this stop sign is working out. And hopefully we can hear from you all again. You'll come back, speak to the board, speak to our committee, and because Chris will be off the board by that point in time, so and off of this committee. So we can kind of have a placeholder as, okay, we're in the spring, we'll plan on at a minimum deploying the temporary speed bump here. And then, I don't know, do we want to talk about, are you guys in favor of doing another one over here or somewhere?
Well, that's where I would put the temporaries down there to see if it's going to be effective. I'm fairly certain that a permanent speed hump is going to be effective up there.
Up here?
No, at the other end. But I'm interested to know how effective they're going to be down at the bottom there. So, when I say the bottom, yeah.
By the lake?
At the bottom of the street, but at the top of the picture. So I think a temporary one is appropriate, definitely up there. But if there's just no time to do it this year, then I agree with that. But I think next spring, I don't know if you're gonna. I think you just put in a permanent one there. I think it's needed.
Well, I think Mark's point is good. That if we may have some additional data. Let's make that as the plan. To put in some speed humps and permanent versus temporary. Let's make that part of the plan. And then we should have some additional data. And if the stop sign solved 100% of the problem, I don't think it's going to, then maybe we could revisit it. But for now, I think since we can't do anything between now and April, which we'll have at least two more TSCs between now and then, let's make the immediate decision on the stop sign, tentative plan on some speed humps, with a agreement to revisit in the winter TSC to see some additional data around the stop sign to see if, maybe the stop sign solved the problem and you don't need the inconvenience. I don't think it's going to, but...
Yeah, that'd be nice, but sure.
Good?
Okay.
So Alex is going to...
I'll get the stop signs up, and we'll put up the two temporary ones next spring, and we'll work on the location of that other one. This one down here seems like it's fairly good location agreed upon.
When you just said determine a good location for the other one, what do you mean?
The other one here?
Oh, I don't know if you need a stop sign down there. I wouldn't put a stop sign there, but I would say if anything, do a speed hump later.
Speed hump up here, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have 2 temporary speed humps, one here and one in this location.
Yeah.
And we'll have a three-way stop up as soon as we can get the signs.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Sergeant Chamberlain will reach out and increase some enforcement.
Do you want any other public outreach, or you think you have enough out here?
I think this community has been activated. Whoever went door to door, thank you for that. So,
thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Next up, speed enforcement by Sheriff's Office. That would be you, Jim.
Guess that'd be me. So I know there's some questions about tickets and if we're doing more or less than last year after adding a new deputy. I've got some, pass these out real quick. So I just pulled some statistics, and we increased by 1 deputy, which is about 14% of our force on the street. And with that increase, we're targeted to increase our tickets over the year by about 25% over last year, about 200 and some tickets more than last year. I also gave you some comparisons of other jurisdictions around here, what their ticket numbers compared to the number of officers they are. And, as you'll see, we've got less officers on the street per day than most other municipalities, including some that are much smaller than us. So I know we talked in the budget meeting this week or last week about adding some extra duty traffic enforcement. That would really give me the opportunity to spend more time on these localized streets where we're getting the complaints and increase enforcement and tickets. I look at enforcement in 2 different ways, because if you look at the second and third page on here, it shows the number of stops that we made as well as the number of tickets. And our stops are probably 2 times as many as the tickets we write. Not everybody we stop deserves a ticket. Sometimes education works just as well.
so Jim, I didn't, forgive me. Remind me what a 9604-1101 is.
1101 speeding. Okay. So if you look at, there's different statute numbers. So if you look at the 42, the 42 codes are a state code.
Okay.
So our tickets are based on geocoding.
Okay.
So there's part of 36 that's actually in the Superior geocode. So if you look at the 42 code, it's because somebody's writing a ticket out on 36. And that's why it's a 42 or a state code versus a municipal code, which is one of the 96 codes.
Do we get the revenue for if you're writing a 42 code on 36?
No. Because most of the time it's not in Superior, so you're not getting a dime.
Just curious.
So when you look at ticket numbers, often you'll see ticket numbers that Shannon puts out, the court clerk puts out, that are different than the numbers that I'll say we're getting.
Right.
Because she's only recording Superior municipal tickets. We look at other tickets. So anything that's based on registration, that's based on driver's license, is written into state court because muni court has no jurisdiction over those items.
Okay. What trends are you seeing? I mean, I want to be, are you seeing, so speeding there's always going to be people that speed. Are you seeing more DWIs, fewer DWIs, less impairments?
Over the years, driving while ability impaired or driving in infants has declined. It's not gone, but it's declined over the years.
And why is that?
I think part of it has to do with the economy being good. Back when the economy was bad and people were losing their jobs, and people didn't have money, but what they had they spent on alcohol and were out drinking a lot. Now, I think some of it's education and some is the economy's better. People aren't as depressed, and there aren't as many people out drinking. Do we still have our share of DUIs? Yes. Okay. But compared to, I think, our highest year, we went back in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I think we had over 1,400 DUI arrests just for the sheriff's office. And I think last year we had a little over 300 DUI arrests for the sheriff's
1,400 in Superior?
No, for the sheriff's office total in the county. Not the city of Boulder or city of Longwood, just for sheriff's office arrests. Okay, so.
And is that alcohol only, or is that impaired under any substances?
Anything. That has been on the rise. Driving while under the influence of drugs has been on the rise compared to driving under the influence of alcohol. It's still basically the same charge. I mean, it's DUI is DUI, driving under the influence is driving under the influence, but we've seen more marijuana ones on the rise compared to alcohol and DUI.
This is helpful data. Just if Alex, if you could just help make sure Matt kind of gets this somehow in our weekly report or in the Dropbox or something, it's helpful to see. And then, Jim, I think you guys, your team is doing great.
And I can, if you want, I can get these stats like every 3 months, so every quarter when we're doing the
that'd be helpful.
PSC, we can provide this on.
As you are, this shouldn't be we want you out patrolling, so no additional reporting for our benefit, just as the reports are available. I'll learn the codes. I've now memorized that a 42 is the state code, so I've got that. Next time I get pulled over, I'm going to ask if it's a 42 and see how that goes.
And then you got to look, 42.2 is registration, 42.4 is traffic. They'll vary.
And so just, I think what I heard from you once was that that there was a board that was influencing maybe for some more leniency, and just to be, I think that the trend of this current board, which I don't want to speak for, but at least what I've heard from at least a couple of us, is less leniency. Let's follow up enforcement. Anybody that's over whatever your judgment is, whether it's 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, particularly in a school zone, zero tolerance, big ticket. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care what you have to do. And for DWIs who are driving while impaired, 100% enforcement, which I'm sure you guys are doing. No excuses.
No, there's no tolerance on that.
Right.
And if you look at a lot of warnings are based on nighttime officers. When they're looking for any reason to stop somebody, we have car trespasses, we have burglaries, we have bike thefts. So they're looking for any reason to contact people. So a tail light, a license plate light, a brake light, they're stopping them for that. That's what's getting a warning. Right. Because we're not going to write people for that. We're going to educate them, help them to fix their vehicle or whatever, and we're looking for other things. Okay. We're not necessarily looking to write a ticket, a $15 ticket for your license plate, like that little tiny light bulb that costs 39 cents. It's a reason for us to stop and look for other things.
Good, helpful.
Anything else?
Yeah. I mean, this data is helpful. I think just for our purposes, the fact that we budgeted for the extra deputy, I think it's helpful to see what is that money being used for, right? And how is it paying dividends? How is it keeping speeds down, increasing enforcement? So yeah, this data is helpful. I agree with Kevin. I wouldn't want to create additional work on your behalf, but periodically to see something like this is helpful.
So we can do it however you want, and if it's on a biannual basis or whatever you want.
Yeah. I think as long as we have some sort of report that is a standard report that we're used to seeing, so we can kind of see the trends as they're developing over time. This is where we were before we started spending on the additional deputy, and this is where we are now going on into the future. So you can just kind of see the data and where the enforcement is actually happening on the Coltons and the Rock Creek Parkways and on the McCaslins or elsewhere.
For those that haven't been glued to their TVs on the budget meeting, we have budgeted 4 hours per day, 4 days per week for an additional deputy who will primarily be patrolling cell for ticket. Will not respond to calls unless Jim and team need her or him. So, accurate?
That's correct.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Next up, Castle Peak speed humps update.
Okay, so last time we had a couple of sets of data before speed data, both on Castle Peak and then on some of the alternate routes, Indiana towards Peak and Mount Silvers. In May, this was right around the end of school, I did a lot of school activities, so we counted there. We had seen that traffic had gone up both on Castle Peak and on the other roadways. So we did another count in August, and we did see these counts a little bit less than We'll be counting in May. We'll put more of them in December. At least for the one down by Rock Creek Circle, one by Shibano was a little less than what we counted in December. On Indiana, it actually went up a little bit from the count in May. I guess one part of Indiana, the portion by Colton, up by Torres Peak, it actually went down from May. Torres Peak was pretty close to what we had in May. It went down a little bit in both instances. And Sopas went down, but it was comparable to what we were counting in December. So those are the daily traffic lines that were counted. In terms of the speed data, we had some concerns of them taking the right locations.
Hey, Alex, can I just interject for a second? I just got a message that you're hard to hear on the video, so.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry about that. My
one of our millions of listeners out of...
Yeah.
It's Trustee Hammerly.
That'll make our ratings go down.
So we tried to make sure, and then this was not the speed trailer, these were the road tubes, and we tried to make sure we were, a couple hundred feet at least away from the speed hump. So we did have a good decrease in speed at the speed hump near Rock Creek Circle. From what we counted in December, it was 28.5. That had gone down to 23. That's the 80th percentile. We had near Cervano went down from 25.5 to 23.5, and then we had another data point up by Gray's Peak of 23 miles per hour. What also was interesting, if you look at the percentage of vehicles that were exceeding the speed limit, back in December, we had down by Rock Creek Circle, we had almost half of the traffic that was exceeding the speed limit. That this we think was too close to the speed hump, but this was a couple hundred feet away, so we only had 4.2% that was exceeding the speed limit of 25 miles an hour. And then the other locations, again, very, very little traffic that's actually exceeding the speed limits.
Alex, did we do anything else on that road? Did we put stop signs in or anything?
No.
It was all speed bumps.
Right. So just to give you a little more graph.
We painted the curbs and moved the parking in because there was issues with parking too close to some of the cul-de-sacs.
Right.
So this shows the approximate location of the two speed humps we had here. This is kind of north of south of Rock Creek Circle, and then there's I think a three-way stop at this location, and then we put the other speed hump up near Gray's Peak. We put it there. There was a trail here. We thought we had a trail crossing. This is uncontrolled, so that was why we chose that location. And this is the data, kind of graphically showing where we took the counts from that table. Same data that was in the table. If we were to install it permanently, I think we may want to look at these locations. Again, you have a three-way stop here. Keep this, it's kind of at the bottom as you're going down the hill. This is probably the highest volume, so you want a speed hump here. This is fairly high volume, over 2,000 vehicles per day. And then from there, going up to Mount Sopris, kind of evenly spaced in between there and the three-way stop. So those would be locations. Again, we would have to...
So, by the way, that's a lot of vehicles. In August, it was 2,760, 3,151. I mean, it's an insane amount of daily vehicles per day. These are dramatically exceeding what these roads were designed for. the issue was, what we were really trying to do was make it safe to slow people down. And this was really effective. Can you speak to any complaints we've received?
Not that I've reached my desk. I think when we were out there putting them in, the people weren't happy going through, and our maintenance people, and they've given us feedback that some people don't like them. Most people are abiding by them.
So your assessment is that they've been effective, though, and so the staff's recommendation is permanent speed bumps.
Yes.
Slight moving them, the location. I think Mark was making a good point. One didn't have an ideal location. I understand why it went there, but move them into a slightly improved location.
All right, kind of evenly space them so we have. There you go. Evenly spaced between here, so we have some traffic calming feature kind of evenly spaced throughout that.
And when will same question, when will this road be redone?
It's not scheduled. Most of these roads were overlaid in 2009. So I think we have another, 7 or 8 years before we do anything out here.
Didn't we completely rebuild that on those?
No. So these are the roads that were just overlaid. Back in 09, we got some really good prices for asphalt. That was in the recession time period. And so they more or less overlaid the roads without, rebuilding or doing any of the, a lot of the concrete work. So we have that investment in there, so we're not planning, at least on this street, to do anything.
So your recommendation, Alex, is, so right now we have a temporary right here at Grace Peak.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then we've got the one that's over here.
Yes.
And so instead of that location, we're going to install 3 permanent. That's your recommendation.
Yes, and it sounds like you had some comments or feedback about location and.
Well, I want to hear from the public. And Laura's here, and Laura lives in Castle Peak, so I'm sure she has something to say. But I had a comment about the location of the temporary one that was here on Grace Peak, because it essentially is in the intersection, so cars can drive around it, and which is pretty dangerous, because if you have cars that are parked up along Castle Peak and somebody's driving by and they're swinging by, they're coming pretty close to hitting people and hitting cars. So that's just, obviously if we're moving that out of there and putting a permanent installation here and a permanent installation here, that'll take care of that. One thing that I've heard anecdotally, and then I want to hear from the public, is the opinion that having a location right here and then having a location here, even with a stop sign right here, that you still had people essentially accelerating between the 2 speed bumps. So just based on the pitch of Castle Peak, that there is a need for 3 instead of 2 speed bumps. Two speed bumps are not enough to really keep the street safe in that stretch. At least that's what I've heard from residents who actually live on this particular stretch right here. But looking forward to hearing from the public.
So our criteria, if I can let's see, for traffic calming on a road that needs traffic calming is have some traffic calming feature every 600 feet. And I was just going to see if I can calculate that. Where'd we go? This is it, right?
Nope, you're wrong street.
That's the arrow, okay. So... So that's half a mile, 2,600 feet. So we have 4 features there. So it's about every 800 feet. Is that right? 700 feet. So we're pretty close to what our guidelines are to try to have something every 600 feet. So that would be my recommendation. Again, to get it done this year, we don't have budget. If you wanted to accelerate next year's budget into this year and wanted me to try to get it done, we have a contractor on our street project. It's again, it's a budgeting issue.
So, before we accelerate anything, and I want to hear from the public again, but I'm really concerned about the design and I want to make sure that these things are engineered appropriately. If we're going to spend the money on a permanent installation, I just don't want to have the type of speed bumps that were installed on Weldona. I just want to make sure that they are actually going to slow people down and not be just a minor nuisance. They should be a deterrent.
Let's just spec them out at 3.5 inches.
I'll come back. There's a lot of literature on the speed humps, and I'll come back with the design. I use the National NUTCO guidelines is what I used, but it was for 3 to 4 inches, so we may have been on the low side. But I'll find out if any entities have gone above the 4 inches and what ramifications they've had. So,
well, Weldona, I think we talked about, Weldona was well below the 3 inches, wasn't it?
No, it was at least 3. The first one was 3, and the others we put were higher.
I don't think it's the height. I think it's the slope. It's such a gradual bump. So that it doesn't have.
We'll look at the width of it.
The width of it, it's a gentle slope that you can just kind of roll over it, and instead of actually, slowing down and hitting the bump. Yeah. I think the problem is we're calling them speed humps, and they should be speed bumps. And so I'm going to make a motion that we call them what they should be.
Well, we discussed that with the difference between the two.
At length.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that
speed humps are ineffective.
Well, whatever's on Castle Peak today is working. It has the desired effect. We should improve this. We either replicate it or improve it, not make it worse. I think Mark's is making a really good point. Let's just make it worse. But let's not make it worse, right? So ultimately, that's
So it's not, you're right. The height was low. It's 3 inches, but it's
right.
Narrow.
I think I'm perfectly comfortable sort of leaving it up to staff and the contractor to get the right one without kind of getting my hands into the literature. But I do want to have the conversation. Do we want to try to accelerate it for this year or next? I think if we probably accelerate it for this year because we're going to be over the line item budget, we might want to bring it to the board for their consideration since we're going over the budget line.
I think that we have to actually see the examples come to the board beforehand, or at least the Traffic and Safety Committee with the examples and the difference of them.
And maybe I can find others in other locations with the varying, different parameters, and we can all go out and test those.
Right.
Hit them.
Jim's car versus my car.
25 miles an hour.
Right.
Okay.
Comment?
Public comment?
Public comment?
Hello, Laura Skwadzinski. I'm at 3652 Castle Peak. First, with regard to the guidelines, I looked into it a little bit. It sounded like 3.5 inches was the max recommended. I have heard complaints from a few neighbors that the current speed humps or bumps or whatever we're going to call them are too high. I personally disagree with that, but I had heard that concern from a few neighbors, so wanted to pass it along. When looking at the data in here, the speed humps that are around Shavano and Gray's Peak, those have certainly had a decrease, but it's been a lot smaller than the decrease for the one that's completely at the base of the hill near Rock Creek Circle. So as I'm hearing these budgetary concerns, I would just like to throw out there that I've heard from a number of neighbors that are south of Mount Sopris that they'd really like to see some speed bumps added in that section as well. We haven't measured the data in there, but the cars are still going up that way pretty quickly as well. Maroon Peak Circle and Torrey's from that direction are another big exit point of traffic from the neighborhood going out to Indiana or also going out to the school in that direction as well. Yep. So if there are budgetary concerns,
in this area here.
Yeah, wondering if we can explore that as well.
So based on the design that Alex has now with 3 locations, how do you feel about those proposed locations versus the 2 that are currently in place?
Get back to that one.
And Alex, if you could pull up that. So we're going more south of Gray's Peak here, and then, what is it, Shavano?
Yep, between Shavano and Huron. So the Grays Peak one, yeah, it's a big issue that it is right next to the intersection. So a number of people have said to move that. I guess the one thing that I question is whether it would be more effective if it were north of Grays and south of Shavano, and we had one there. The one that's kind of south of, yeah, exactly. I certainly hear what we're saying about the number of recommended feet between them. I just know that that bottom one right now is so close to Mount Sopris that I think it's going to be a lot of just, go over that, and then you're immediately slowing down for the stop at Mount Sopris.
So maybe move this closer to here and move that one.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is if we put it right between Grays and Shavano and used that one to cover both intersections. I'm just wondering, I'm wondering how effective that would be, and I would certainly propose that we did a temporary speed bump there and not the permanent until we see if the 3 are needed. I'm just wondering if we could get away with putting one in the middle. Because we do have at Huron Peak, we have the stop, and at Mount Sopris, and I would say both of those are pretty well-regarded stop signs. Certainly Mount Sopris, no one rolls through because it's only a 2-way stop and not a 4-way stop. And at Huron Peak, I think I've seen more people roll through that than they do Mount Sopris, but it still is an intersection that gets pretty busy, so I think people are watching for it. Whereas I know in other neighborhoods, if you have a cul-de-sac stop, sometimes people think, well, there's nobody coming out of there, I'll just go through. Not saying that's what they should do, but that's what I've seen happen.
And then separately, did I hear you correctly that you think that there should be bumps installed south of Mount Sopris on this section?
Yes.
And where would you think that would make sense?
I think most likely it would be between Sunlight and Wyndham. So the first cul-de-sac and then that through street that goes to.
This is Sunlight?
Yes.
And this is Wyndham?
Yes, Wyndham Peak.
So right here?
And then potentially between the 2 Maroon Peak on the far south side.
This is Maroon?
Yep.
Right here. Okay.
I'd certainly defer to what sort of data we can collect around speeds in this area, because I know we haven't really tested the south end as much. But
we had speed data from last fall along here, so we have some speed.
It wasn't I recall it wasn't a significant problem that it was on the other side of Mount Sopris.
And I think one of the concerns that was raised initially had to deal with people that were trying to drive to El Dorado K8 coming from the other side of Colton, using Castle Peak as kind of a main thoroughfare to shuttle their kids to school.
And the volume's definitely much higher on the north side of Castle Peak than it is the south. I certainly don't deny that, but as we're talking about additional speed bumps, those would be a great area to have some.
Yeah, I think we need to look at where else. I mean, now I'm worried about that side of Torrey's Peak, frankly, because that's all a pretty big increase. I mean, you're going to, some people are just going to avoid the speed bumps, and they're not going to go the preferred route, which would be Colton, Indiana. They're just not going to drive around that far. So we have seen a disproportionate increase on Torrey's since we had the speed bumps.
Torrey's would actually be a great candidate for a raised pedestrian median, because there is a trail that crosses that goes into the open space. So if you go to Torrey's, because that's actually right by my house, but right there, that's space you could just put in a raised median right there.
I agree.
And with where the curves are on that.
Halfway between Rock Creek Circle and Indiana.
But that's right. But for today,
right.
But I think that's next year's TSC needs to think about. Okay, let's look at. This is great that we tried these, because we've had some really good data and outcomes that were as good or better than expected. So I think now the question is for the Castle Peak, are we aligned on the staff recommendation on the 3, or do we want to suggest alternative to the staff recommendation? Thank you, Mark.
Well, it sounds like we definitely have, at least everybody seems to like the location of the one down here, right? Sure. That seems to be working. It seems to make sense. So, I'm generally supportive of making that permanent, ripping out the temporary and doing it permanent. And, in terms of 2 versus 3, my concern with all of this is kind of the same as we were talking before, is making sure that we get the location correct, so they're effective, right? And I don't want us to install something permanently and then have buyer's remorse and say, gee, we should have moved it up 50 feet. It would have been a better placement. So, I don't want to be wasteful with, redeploying the temporaries, but that's kind of the point of them, right? Is to have the ability to try things out and then move them if we don't like them. So, maybe what we do as kind of a matter of best practices is we use the temporaries to actually figure out exactly where we're going to put the permanent, and then we put the permanent exactly where the temporaries were, rather than, guessing. If it only costs $3,000 to install the temporaries, each temporary, that seems like it's a reasonable.
We'll make it a little better every time. So
yeah. I don't know.
So is your proposal, so we do the permanent on the bottom and do that now, and then move 2 temporaries up to the top and see what kind of community feedback we get? And
well, I would be looking at the results. Are you going to get the same results?
Oh, that's good. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea, Mark. I think it's good. The problem is you can't move the temporary now.
Yeah, we have to wait till the spring.
Well, we're going to have to take the temporaries out for the winter.
Right, but in the meantime, we could put a permanent.
I would put the permanent one down at the bottom for the suggestion, but the other 2, I would definitely move.
If we have the 2 temporary, maybe put a permanent one here, put a permanent one at Pitkin, where there seems to be pretty good consensus, and then put the temporary, one temporary on Pitkin and one temporary, move the temporary down to another location on Castle Peak.
But are you considering installing a permanent one at the bottom of Castle Peak now?
I think we should. Yeah. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, but what Alex was saying is that instead of deploying the temporary in Pitkin, like we were talking about, because there seemed to be consensus on the location, at least on the southern.
By the pond.
No. You were suggesting by the houses, right?
On the wall. On Pitkin?
Right, where the neighbors are located?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think Alex was suggesting, put a permanent one there, not a temporary, and put a permanent one here.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, in the spring, we can redeploy the 2 temporaries on alternate locations on Castle Peak, or 3.
We have 3, yes. Yeah. I would maybe do one of the other locations that we're talking about.
Or we could do 2 on Castle Peak and then 1 by that lake on Pitkin.
So here's what first I hate that we're back to talking about Pitkin after we close the agenda item, but you've convinced me that we don't have a ton of experience putting these things in, and we're kind of 0 for 2 getting them right the first time. The first time they were the wrong size. Second time we put one in kind of the wrong location. We put a permanent one on the bottom graphically by those folks' houses on Pitkin, and we screw it up. It's by somebody's driveway, or it's not the right height. It's permanent. Now it's permanent. Nothing's permanent on a road, but as opposed to if we put the permanent one by the pond, there's no resident that lives within 700 feet that's going to be upset that it's in the driveway or it's too noisy. And now we have, so you put 1 permanent on Castle Peak on the bottom, the top on the map, the bottom of Castle Peak. You put 1 permanent on the, by the
northern section by the pond.
And then you'll have 3 temporary to mess with. We take 2 temporary in the spring, and we put them on Castle Peak.
We only have 2 temporary.
Oh, I thought we had 3.
No.
I thought we had 2 out there now, and you had 1.
Yeah, 1 in the
garage or something.
You bought 3.
Oh, we only bought 2.
This changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
This changes everything. Start over. Yeah, that's what we were trying to figure out. It doesn't matter. The point is, let's not revisit the Pitkin. Let's play with the stops. Let's put the stop sign on Pitkin. I propose we not revisit Pitkin after folks have left. Let's put I think we all can align on the permanent on Castle Peak, and then let's mess with the locations in the spring for the temporary. And we should probably think about ordering a couple more temporary, because...
Yeah, I would say let's get 2 more of them.
Yeah, this isn't the last. This is
right. So we'll have 4. So we'll get 2 more temporary to put in the shop, and then try to fund the permanent one with or without taking it to the board.
Yeah, I think with this sort of thing, especially if it's near people's driveways, getting the location is really more of an art than it is a science, and we're going to get it wrong. We're going to need to adjust, and so I think as a matter of best practices, it makes sense to just deploy the $3,000 installation of the temporaries and see if it works, right? See if that's the right location before we spend $15,000 to $25,000 on a permanent.
So you don't want to do the permanent on the bottom of Castle Peak?
No. That we've already figured out where the location is. That one works.
So that one, okay.
So let's do the permanent right there.
Great, agree.
Totally fine with that. I think we still need to figure out a solution for the section of Castle Peak up the hill, whether that is a proper location for 1 or whether it's a proper location for 2.
So I'm comfortable doing the 1 permanent and making that decision with us, not going to the board and giving Alex that direction. You guys agree?
Yes.
Okay. And then it's the temporary that we revisit in the spring and make sure we get it right before we put in a permanent.
Right, and in the meantime, let's order 2 more temporaries so we can deploy at least 1, if not 2, in the Pitkin neighborhood.
Agree.
So, Alex, for next year, if we redeploy the temporary ones on Castle Peak and have different locations, you still have time in the year that you'll be able to determine which is a good spot. And still put the permanent ones in, perhaps next summer.
Yes, we can get the permanent ones, next summer. Yeah, if we put them in the spring, kind of late April, give a couple of months, and then fool around with a couple of locations. We may have to put them in a couple locations and test them for a month or so.
Okay. Cool.
Still trying to do it, and then maybe get the permanent ones in before next winter. So the ones we've tested on the temporary basis, replace them with the permanent ones.
Makes sense. Maybe have a comment.
Brian Hill, Kyoto Lane. So I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better. On Castle Peak, you had an experiment. You used the Model Uniform Traffic Code to establish locations for the speed bumps, and you collected data, and there was some benefit from that. But now it sounds like you want to move them around to maybe get some additional benefit in terms of reduced speeds, what have you. So I'm just kind of curious, is it really worth going down that road? Did you achieve some benefits? And is that good enough, or is it just not good enough, and that's why we're repositioning the temporaries on Castle Peak?
I think it's a good... So this is much more informal than the board. So thanks, Brian. I think it's a good comment. I think we talked about this earlier. Let's not let good be the enemy of great, or great be the enemy of good. But I think it's we did get some feedback, and if you just drive down Castle Peak, you could kind of scoot around that one in particular that's near an intersection, and maybe that's not the safest idea. And so, yeah, we are trying to move some dials, but directionally, we had a fantastic outcome. But I think if your comment is let's definitely not make it worse, we agree. We're not going to make it worse, and we probably couldn't do 3 permanent this fiscal year anyway, just from a
budget perspective, and the temporary have to come out before the winter. And so getting one permanent where there's unanimous amongst us anyway, and the community of this is a good location, and then for the others, let's fiddle with it a little bit. And if the best location is at the intersection, and that's the best outcome, and it's not a safety issue, then maybe that's where the permanent goes. So.
Right. So this leads to my second comment. So it's an experiment that's going on, and there's some cost to it. You want to buy some more temporary speed humps. And so in the case of Pitkin being the next street in a neighborhood where you get complaints and you respond to it, do you think that you're going to get better at placement? And then a corollary is, how many neighborhoods are going to come to you with, speeding issues that you're going to have to deal with? How big is your budget going to be for 2020 for speed humps? And that's just my only comment. I just don't know where this is going. Are you going to try to rein it in? Do you have some standard you're, shooting for? Or is it just going to be very subjective?
Well, I think we're actually gaining some data from this, because the one that was placed near the intersection on I almost said Pitkin, on Castle Peak, we've determined that that's not an ideal spot for it. So that's something that Alex will remember next time we go to place some of these temporaries out there, that's probably not the best spot or the first spot we go to. So yes, we are obtaining some good data for future placement. But I really believe that this isn't the last of it. We're going to have many more areas of Rock Creek that are going to come to the board saying that we don't like the speeds on our streets. We want to have some speed humps out here. What can we do? And we'll have this ability to deploy those things in the springtime at any given time, because we'll have 5, 6, 7 of them in storage that we can pull them out.
But it's a really good point, Brian, and I hear you loud and clear. This committee, we're not trying to deploy a solution in search of a problem, and what we've really tried to do here is be more nimble than the board can be, and be more responsive than the board can be agile, do these kind of pilot projects that we're not spending huge amounts of money, all things considered, right? It's not an insignificant amount of money, but it's not on the scale of what the board would typically approve, right? We're looking at like a $3 million project on 88th, for example. So we're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about, thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars. But with Castle Peak, that has been an issue that we have heard about for years. And I think I won't speak for Kevin and for Chris, but when I got on this committee, my hope was that we could answer some of these kind of longstanding problems that have been remaining unaddressed by the board, because it's easy for us to just say, well, the status quo is fine, and let's try some things out. We may not necessarily get everything right, but we'll be a little more responsive than just sticking our heads in the sand and pretending like there isn't a problem. So case in point, with Castle Peak, we authorized the expenditure for apparently 2, I thought it was 3, but 2 of these temporary speed bumps, so we could be a little more nimble and deploy them in a non-permanent manner, in a relatively inexpensive manner, to see if things would work, and then we'll learn from that. Same thing with Waldona. We tried to be responsive to that community and initially put in some speed bumps. I think the lessons that we learned from that kind of led to this decision here to get these temporary speed bumps. It's these incremental gains, I think, of experience. We're trying to get better at what we're doing. We're trying to listen to the community, but also do things in a more time-sensitive and responsive manner that otherwise is really frustrating from the perspective of the residents who see these problems that remain unsolved by the board, because the board's got a lot on its plate and it's easy to just kind of move on to the next problem.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
The only other thing that I'd add, Brian, is our streets get basically either resurfaced or redone periodically. It's you start at one end and you go to the other. So every time we redo a street, we're going to make the street better. And so we're going to add neck downs. We're going to add raised crosswalks. These things would be really expensive to do on a one-off. And so that's what. But we can't add neck down. I don't know how many miles of streets do we have?
35 center line and 80 lane
Okay. That's a very technical answer. Thank you. Right, so we can't, whatever Alex said, we can't do all those many miles of streets in a year. So, but every time we redo a street, I think, folks like you that are influencing the board need to come up and say, hey, don't forget, let's, instead of waiting for a problem, let's try to get ahead of this. And can you design the street to more current designs instead of...
We did that on Eldorado, on Indiana, on the buildings, kind of complicated.
That's great, thanks.
Just one final issue on, do we need any more public outreach, I guess, for the permanent installation?
I would imagine people don't even recognize the difference between a temporary and permanent on that one, right? I think if we put it in the Sentinel that we're, a quick paragraph on what we're doing, that would be sufficient, I think.
I think you have to say something because you're going to remove 2 until next spring, so people are going to wonder why we're doing that.
We could put an article. Do you want a mailing to everybody along Castle Peak, or do you?
I would put it in the Sentinel and just say, the temporary speed bumps that we installed won't last through the winter, so we need, as a matter of course, and this is just for educating the public about how these things are going to get used, that we need to remove them for the winter, and that, based on that pilot project, we're going to make the northern location on Castle Peak permanent, and we're going to find alternate locations for 2 locations on Castle Peak.
Yeah. So would you give more detail though on what the outcome was? Is that what you're saying? I think it was a good project and it worked. So I think you should give more detail to the entire community about the success of that, and then go into what's going to happen.
Sure, I'll write an article and include some data.
Good. Laura?
Along those same lines, I would just ask, when we push this out in the Sentinel and we provide the data, could we also encourage residents to write in with their suggestions for where it should be? I've heard a little bit, but I think a lot of people don't really know that they can write in and that they can suggest places, and even say, please suggest a specific at this house number would be a great spot, would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, because I think that's a great suggestion. There's 2 things that we want to communicate. Number one is just letting people know that these things are going to come up in the winter months as a matter of course, but then also that the whole purpose of deploying them in the first place is for them to be temporary because we're experimenting. So that's the whole point of this whole experiment. Now, there may be times when we put them in for 2 months, we recognize this is perfect and we'll put in a permanent immediately, or vice versa. We might learn that it's not the right location. We pull it out and try someplace else. It just happens that we're going to be pulling them out to correspond with the winter at this point in time.
Okay, just quickly an update on some of the requests we've had over the last year or so. We did find green sharrows. These are installations we did on 76th Street. We did upgrade some crosswalks and stop bars in original Superior. We are working on additional yield and striping on US 36.
Where is that?
That's on 76th Street.
So what is that saying, telling somebody?
It's a sharrow, which basically says share the road. Bikes and vehicles share the road because we don't have room for an actual bike lane.
See, that wouldn't have been my first thought. I think we need to educate the public about that.
Yeah, and I think
to me that's telling me this is okay for bikes, but that's not necessarily saying that it's this is meant to be shared with cars and bikes.
Right. So we'll have an article in the Sentinel about this too, and we've had requests for these actually in the roundabout, the Main Street McCaslin roundabout. So we're going to add these in the outside lane on the roundabout because the bike lane ends and bicyclists want.
Yeah, people just don't know that, Alex. So that's good. You know, I don't want that on the right side of the lane. I want a big, how do you say, Sharrow? H-A-R-R-O-W? Mm-hmm. Right in the middle of the right lane on the roundabout.
We will. Yeah, that was our criteria. So when this went in, that was my feeling. This is in the wrong. It should be in the center of the lane.
Right.
And
so right. I get yelled at all the time in the McCaslin roundabout, right. And I have just as many rights as a vehicle in that right lane, and people don't yet. 5 years from now, people are going to understand that, and we'll all know what the green bike thing looks like. But we got to oversign this thing on the road.
So this will, it'll go in the middle of the outside lane on McCaslin.
Please.
And then we had these signs that were added, remember, at Sycamore and Marshall. There was questions about getting across. They wanted some different things. We actually also looked at the mid-block crossing on Marshall between Sycamore and McCaslin, and our recommendation was not to do that, but we did add these signs at Sycamore and Marshall. We did add rectangular rapid flashing beacons on Sycamore Street. There's a daycare center, and they requested that they cross to the park, and they wanted some additional protection, so we added that. A long-standing request was to put rapid flashing beacons at 88th and Rock Creek Parkway, so those just went in. And we'll be testing this out, and we may add these as well at Colton and McCaslin, going over to the trailhead. That's been a request as well. That's the
rapid flashing pedestrian crossings.
Right. These cost about $7 or $8 grand. One signing.
I think at the Colton and McCaslin intersection, because there's just so many bikes and people running, even early morning, late at night, getting onto the Colton trailhead, that would be a good location.
Because those are still visible.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. That's one. I wouldn't be against it, but I do that crossing a lot, and I don't have a problem because cars are going so slow right there.
I don't know. I think it's dangerous, personally, but.
And we also added the speed radar on McCaslin, either side of Indiana.
Last couple of days, by the way. Not the fire.
Yeah, the speed radar.
And the one on 88th wasn't working today.
On 88th? A speed radar, or?
Right.
There is one there.
I was going 40.
Said it wasn't working.
Oh, it wasn't working? Okay.
Working. And Kevin said the one on McCaslin wasn't working.
McCaslin hasn't been working either last couple of days.
Okay, yeah.
Which one? The one coming down from 128?
Down from 128.
Okay. Yeah, we just fixed the one on Colton, near Indiana. Yeah, the solar and the batteries here are high maintenance, so let me know whenever you see one that's not working. We'll go out and check it out.
Right. I think just as a matter, so I think the ones that are on that's perfect for Indiana, but if we ever get one, these rapid flashings, and we decide to put one in the neighborhood, I'd rather spend another $4,000 or $5,000 to get one that's a little bit more aesthetically appealing than the one on Torrey's Peak, for example, which looks like it belongs on Indiana or 36. So I don't want it ripped out. We shouldn't be spending them. It's there. It is what it is. But next time.
So the speed radar, yes, they make them in different sizes. Is that?
Yeah. Maybe one that would be appropriate.
Yes.
For a more residential street.
Okay.
And I know they're going to be more. You'll say, oh, well, that's more expensive because it's custom or whatever, but it's worth it, I think.
I think that's it. Okay.
That's good.
Anything else for next time that you want me to?
We're going to do another one of these.
Normally do them every quarter. I'm not sure if we want to do one in December.
This is your last one?
This is my last one.
I would like to do one, so we'll probably figure out which board members are on which committees in November, if we could fit this in December, I think these are great, and if we only do them 3 times a year, there's updates. So I think even if it's an abbreviated meeting, I'd like to see one in December, and I'd like to personally stay on. I don't know if Mark feels the same. More on the 3rd.
Thank you, Trustee Hansen, for your service on this committee.
Thanks, Chris.
It really is a fun committee.
We have cake in the other room.
Yeah, sure.
There's no cake.
Thanks.
Thank you.